Hello, everyone. Good morning. Yeah, I found some new exercises. Modifiers, dangling modifiers. You have a couple weeks to work on them. I think I have them due the 19th. All the exercises are graded on Khan Academy. Is that what you're asking, Fabian? I don't transfer them to Brightspace. Is that what you're okay, you can look also at your grades. It should have a list that tells you which exercises you've completed and what your scores were. I'll have a grade in ENG280, yes. Yeah, as long as you, if you do it again, you can do it as many times as you want. If you just want to go back and review, as long as you do them, I'm giving you full credit for doing them. What grade counts? That's a good question. You get a grade just for doing it, whatever score you get a participation grade. Yeah, Lizzie, there are some more Khan Academy exercises. But then I'll also look at what you scored, and if you went back and did them again, then you'll get a better score for the overall grade. So I'll take sort of a overall average of the scores. And that'll be another grade that goes into your 280 grade. So one is participation. Doing the exercises, and then an overall average scores. Okay, cool. If that happens, just send me an email with the videos that you've watched that it has not necessarily marked. Okay. Okay, good questions. Anybody else? Like I said, the exercises due, I think, November 19th. You have a bit to work on them. Oh, okay, Kaylee. Kaylee has a tip. You have to have the volume on for your videos to be counted as complete. Are you just like messing with him, or is that actually true?
No, that's actually true. Like it has the words on the video so you can read them, but if you don't have your volume turned up, then it doesn't count it as complete.
Okay, well there you go, Cole. Make sure your audio's on.
I'm not sure if that's his issue. I just thought
Yeah.
give it a shot.
It might be a different issue. Yeah, I know. But thank you, because that's good for future reference, so I can tell everyone. And you have to watch the whole video. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, Fabian, I'm the same way. I watch TV with subtitles a lot of the time. I know for some reason it helps. I got used to it when I was watching Korean and Chinese dramas, so. Okay, today I want to do some more work on what I consider the most difficult part of the research paper process for you guys, which is explaining the evidence, because it sort of engages all of your skills, your critical thinking skills, your ability to communicate effectively in writing, to integrate it smoothly into your paper. So we worked a little bit on that yesterday in class. You guys looked at the Martin Luther King quote, explained what you thought it meant. So let's look at another example. Okay. So whatever kind of paper you're writing, the kinds that we're working on for class, whether it's an argument, it's an analysis, you're basically analyzing two sides of your controversy in this paper, right? Or persuasive, which will be the next paper that we do. Not this paper, but the next paper, okay? So you have to support your argument. So even if you're just telling us that like Van Gogh was one of the best impressionist artists, you have to have experts and evidence that support that, and you have to explain that evidence. So I think this gives some nice clear examples of how to integrate it into your paper. So to use your evidence clearly and effectively in a paragraph, you can follow this simple three-step process. And we talked about it like a sandwich, right? Introduce the evidence, okay? State the evidence, explain the message you're emphasizing through the evidence, okay? So you start with the claim. Hold on, we got a question? Yeah, go ahead, Colson. See if I can turn up mine. Give it a second. Okay. So just like we did yesterday, remember I gave you guys a claim when we were doing the voting article, right? All right, Colson, is that any better?
Yeah, it is. Thank you.
Okay, sure. So I gave you guys the claim that says basically that states don't always count the votes in the same way, right? And then you provided a piece of evidence, or we found one from the article, and then we explained it, all right, to integrate the quote in there. So first you make your assertion, your claim, okay? Ideally, it's the topic sentence of your paragraph, because that's a really nice way to make your essay understandable, your research paper organized and clear. So for example, they're using Adolf Hitler's writings reinforce the belief there's no objective reality. Instead, a person creates his or her own reality. That was one of his tenets, okay? So then you have to introduce the evidence. Remember, we're talking about signal phrases, right? Always have something that signals to us that you're about to add evidence from a source. So some common ones we've talked about, according to, and you use according to Adolf Hitler, according to his book Mein Kampf, the author states, the author writes, the author concludes, the author attests, all those verbs that you have as a possibility. So for an example, in Mein Kampf, Hitler asserts, okay. Next, you state your evidence, okay. If it's a quotation, you copy the quote word for word, okay. So this is maybe the evidence you're going to use to support his statement that reality is objective in his opinion, okay. If you tell a big enough lie and tell it often enough, it will be believed, okay. So you're layering all these things together. Here's his claim. Here's what he says that shows he made this claim. And then this is the tricky part, right? You have to explain to your audience how it connects to the claim, okay? Immediately after you state the evidence, explain the underlying message. You're reading between the lines. You're connecting the dots for us, okay? So it requires you to think critically about how to explain to your audience how the evidence supports the claim. And I said this yesterday, it's okay if you feel like you're explaining something that seems obvious, because things that are obvious to you may not necessarily be obvious to us. I mean, you don't have to like be overly obvious, like, but in terms of ideas, we may not come to the same conclusions that you do, okay? So here's some questions that you can ask yourself. How does this evidence support what he is asserting, okay? What are the strongest points? How does it relate to the author's original idea? Okay, is there anything about the author's original main idea that can be applied to your assertion or thesis? Is there anything about the quote or example that wouldn't be obvious to readers, right? We talked about the debate example. Candidates on one side think their candidate won and vice versa. So it wouldn't be obvious to someone on the other side why somebody thought the opposing candidate won the debate. They would have to explain it. So here's their example of them explaining the evidence. They look at the quote. By describing the lie as big, Hitler emphasizes that determination and perseverance can help a person accomplish even unrealistic goals. In his mind, objective reality has no importance. Instead, what matters is what people believe, no matter how big the lie. That's kind of scary. After the evidence, you link that to your thesis statement, because really all of this information, all the evidence you're putting in your paper is to support the main idea of your paper, right? So for a paper whose main idea is that reality is socially constructed, basically society decides what reality is. That's, I guess, their idea in the paper that they're writing. So then they're going to expand on it by connecting it to their thesis. Sometimes creating one's own reality means creating a reality for others as well. As Hitler illustrates, because we are susceptible to believing repeated lies, each individual's reality is dependent on others. So the people around you reinforce your reality. Okay. So here's the final product, right? Adolf Hitler's writings reinforce the belief there's no objective reality. That's our claim, right? Instead, each person creates his or her own reality. There's a quote that I think is funny from, it's a TV show where they used to like Mythbusters. I don't know if anybody ever watched it. It's been off the air for a while, but the guy.
I've heard of it. We had to watch it in psychology class in high school, I think.
Yeah, so like he used to say, I reject your reality and substitute my own, which I find a lot of people do. So if someone says something and I know I'm wrong, sometimes I'll be like, oh, I reject your reality and substitute my own. So again, so we've got the claim, right? Hitler's writings, he's basically talking about how he gaslights people. They reinforce the belief there's no objective reality. Instead, a person creates his or her own reality. And then we have the evidence. Here's the signal phrase. In Mein Kampf, that's the book that he wrote when he was alive. In Mein Kampf, Hitler asserts, if you tell a big enough lie and tell it often enough, it will be believed. Okay, so you just repeat it over and over and over. And then the interpretation. By describing the lie as big, Hitler emphasizes determination and perseverance can help a person accomplish even unrealistic goals, which is making people believe that lies, something that's untrue, right, is true. In his mind, objective reality has no importance. Instead, what matters is what people believe, no matter how big the lie. Sometimes creating one's own reality means creating a reality for others as well, as Hitler illustrates. Because we are susceptible to believing repeated lies, each individual's reality is dependent on others. I find that a scary thought. But true. It's good to know, right? So you have all of the elements here. So your work as the writer in a research paper, besides gathering the research and putting it together in an organized, coherent fashion, is to state the claims, back them up with evidence, and then explain their significance, both to the single idea they're expressing and then the overall idea of your thesis. Okay. So for example, how would that work in your paper, right? So let's say you're doing online education and the controversies about whether it's an effective or ineffective method of teaching elementary school kids, right? So you're going to provide evidence like statistics showing performance, academic performance maybe, and then explaining this evidence shows academic performance for Zoom classes is better or worse. I don't know. I haven't looked at the evidence for kids who are online versus face-to-face in a classroom. This means that something is lost in the process by which teaching online uses video or audio instead of having face-to-face interactions. So then you go about describing what the evidence shows. It shows there's a problem somewhere in there if it's bad evidence, or if it's the same, you can say there's no loss of quality. You have to analyze it, right? And tell us what it means. So you're showing us both sides. So you're showing us what the maybe advocates or opponents of online education think. Questions so far? So that's your main job in a research paper, is explain the significance of all this information you're throwing at us, right? Interpret it. Tell us what it means. Connect it to the main idea. Okay. These are the main disagreements that people have about the minimum wage. Who's it just passed the minimum wage? Florida. Florida just passed a $15 minimum wage with the election. So some people agree with the minimum wage. Some people do not agree with raising the minimum wage. And so you provide evidence. Proponents believe that it raises people out of poverty. Opponents believe that it hurts small businesses. You provide the evidence, then you explain how the evidence shows it hurts small businesses or how it helps people rise out of poverty. All right. So now I would like you to find a passage from your paper where you're using evidence and show me the passage. And if you haven't yet explained the significance of the evidence, do that and put your draft up here in the chat. If you haven't explained it, then we'll help you work on it and kind of perfect it. Or we'll say that looks good. Okay, so find a passage from your draft that uses evidence. To support a claim. Okay.
Does it have to be a direct like citation, or can it be something we paraphrase that's still evidence?
It can be quote or a paraphrase, anything that it takes information from a source to provide evidence.
Okay.
Okay. If you don't have the explanation yet, that's okay. You can work on it before you submit it in the chat. So we're just practicing, and then we're going to review what you're doing and try and help you out a little bit with it. If you haven't done it yet, now's the time to explain your evidence or put a piece of evidence in. Okay. Explain the evidence if you have not already done so. and then post the draft in the chat. All right. So I'll give you some time to look for a section of your paper. You might want to choose one you're having trouble with, and then maybe we can help you explain the evidence if you're not sure how to go about it. All right. So it's okay if you post one and you're like, here's the evidence, but I'm not really sure how to explain it. Give it a shot, you know, try to explain it, and then we can make sure we understand what you're saying. All right, I'll check in with you guys in about 10 minutes here.